All right. Welcome, everybody. Spiritual Psychotherapy, episode 5. We got a fun one in the pipeline for today. Um, as always, I like to begin with some Zen stuff. And last time we mentioned this saying above, there isn't a piece of tile to cover his head. Below, there isn't an inch of earth for him to stand on. And we said that this represents the firm ground of emptiness upon which Zen students are encouraged to rely upon, which is, if you notice what I said the firm ground of emptiness, meaning there's nothing to rely upon. And the thing about Zen is, as Alan Watts would say, it beats the stuffing out of you. It beats everything out of you until you cling to nothing. So this was what we read last time. Above, there isn't a piece of tile to cover his head. Below, there isn't an inch of earth for him to stand on. So in that same vein, when the mouth wants to speak about it, words fail. When the mind seeks affinity with it, thought vanishes. Sun and moon cannot illuminate it completely. Heaven and earth cannot cover it entirely. The deer hunter doesn't see the mountains. The miser doesn't see men. So I love this because it really puts into the words the fact that it's impossible to put anything into words. And the second you try to grasp it with words, it immediately vanishes. The sun and the moon are incapable of illuminating whatever it is. And whatever you think you're seeing, whatever you think you are sensing, is not necessarily as it seems. Here's a few separate Zen sayings just to continue to get our appetite wet for some of this spiritual psychotherapy coming your way. In the words of the poet Hokoji, marvelous power and supernatural activity, drawing water, carrying wood. So if that seems boring to you, realize it's really anything but that. But when your mind is so clear, all you need to focus on is just what is, which is drawing water, carrying wood. So as I sit here, I look around, I see table and chairs, book, and water bottles. It's equivalent to that. There's a Zen poem which says, sudden crash of thunder, the mind doors burst open, and there sits the ordinary old man. That is describing something incredible, which is during the mystical experience, a person is having all these different visions and sensing and seeing and hearing all these different marvelous, fantastic, supernal visions and sounds that he's hearing and seeing. But at the end of the day, once he comes back to quote unquote himself, all of a sudden, after the doors of the mind burst open, there you are. You come back to little old me, quote unquote. And that's the almost hilariousness of the experience, is the dichotomy between the grandeur of what this mystical experience is like versus the seeming mundaneness of just little old me sitting here. But somehow little old me is the portal towards all of this. So again, we mentioned last time, what is that portal? Can anybody ever really find that portal? Well, Kabir has a beautiful quote about this. He says, wherever you are is the entry point. Meaning you don't have to look somewhere else to find what you're looking for. I always like to quote The Alchemist. The message of the book is the buried treasure you were looking for was right in your backyard the whole time. So it's really very much about a journey inwards. And that may sound cliche, but I think we're trained in today's day and age to constantly be looking outwards, to constantly be looking for stimulation. But when we do this inner journey to the self, we really start to see what the ancient poets are talking about. Lightning flashes, sparks shower. In one blink of your eyes, you've missed seeing. What this is saying is it's something that can never be captured. It's something that is like, wow, it was like lightning before my eyes, sparks that were showering. But then before I knew it, I missed it. Whatever it was, it passed by so quickly, I could barely pay attention. So now I'd like to read with you some words from Alan Watts. Alan Watts has really just a fantastic lecture, many, many different lectures. And this one in particular, I took some excerpts that I thought were really fun. Once upon a time, there was a Zen student who quoted an old Buddhist poem to his teacher, which says, "The voices of torrents are from one great tongue. The lines of the hills are the pure body of Buddha." Isn't that right? He said to the teacher. It is, said the teacher, but it's a pity to say so. So this Zen student was seeking validation from the teacher. He's saying, aren't you impressed that I'm aware and I can reflect this ancient Buddhist teaching, which is saying that the voices of torrents are from one great tongue. The lines of the hills are the pure body of Buddha. Isn't that right? So he's really trying to start up some kind of conversation with his teacher. And the teacher, in classic Zen fashion, is saying, it's true, but it's a pity to say so. Because as we always say, even the necessity or feeling this necessity to speak words is a total sham in a way when it comes to Buddhism, because you can never put it into words. So what exactly are we doing here? Every time I ask myself the same question, it's like when you go to a psychiatrist or to a therapist that's court mandated, and you look at the therapist and you say, all right, what am I doing here? It's kind of the same thing. What are we doing here? Well, we can have fun with the words, but let's not get lost in them. Let's see that they're pointing to something greater than themselves, similar to what we mentioned in the Zohar a couple of weeks back. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was in Shamayim and the angels were challenging God, they're saying, how could you let a human of flesh and blood join our ranks? And Moses was told by God, grab onto my kisei kavod, grab onto my throne and answer them. Meaning, when you grab onto that which is beyond yourself, when you grab onto non-grabbing, in other words, that's when you are able to answer those angels in your mind. He says, it would be, of course, much better if this occasion were celebrated with no talk at all. And if I addressed you in the manner of the ancient teachers of Zen, I should hit the microphone with my fan and leave, right? Imagine I gave episode 6, just boom, and then I'm out of here. That's the way it was done in some ancient Zen circles. I warn you that by explaining these things to you, I shall subject you to very serious course, because if I allow you to leave here this evening under the impression that you understand something about Zen, you will have missed the point entirely. So there's nothing to get. And if you think you got it, you missed it. He says here, because Zen is a way of life, a state of being that is not possible to embrace in any concept whatsoever, so that any concepts, any ideas, any words that I shall put across to you this evening will have as their object showing you the limitations of words and of thinking. So the words that are of value are the words that show themselves to be limited. And it's similar to what we talked about with the intellect. A good intellectual argument is one that shows the limits of the intellect, because then it allows you to see that which is beyond. It is the very nature of energy to be like waves, and waves have crests and troughs. Only we, being under a certain kind of sleepiness or illusion, imagine that the trough is going to overcome the wave, right? We're always afraid, or the crest, right? So we're afraid that the trough is going to overcome the crest of the wave. The yin, the dark principle, is going to overcome the yang, or the light principle. And that all is finally going to triumph over on, and we, shall I say, bug ourselves by indulging in that illusion. Supposing darkness did win out, wouldn't that be terrible? And so we're constantly trembling and thinking that it may. So when you reduce reality to really just dualism, this is the level just outside the gates of heaven. Just outside the gates of the non-dual is dualism. We're constantly playing with these games of good and evil, positive and negative, yin and yang. And we are totally neurotic about this. We cannot allow black to win. If black wins, if emptiness wins, if the negative wins, then we are cooked. We're done. We're through. So when you find that out, he's saying, when you find out really that all along it could never have happened, right? It was never going to be the case that one would win out over the other because they need each other. He says, when you find that out, you become full of energy and delight, right? So when you find out that really the truest you cannot die, you become full of energy and delight. As Blake said, energy is eternal delight. And you suddenly see through the whole sham of things. You realize you are that. We won't put a name on it, he says. You're that. You're it. And you can't be anything else. So you are relieved of fundamental terror. I love this. I think this is where spiritual psychotherapy begins. It's the ability to see beyond. I think I'm hearing someone's feedback.
Yeah, no, I thought you were going to take a pause. I was going to add a comment, but go ahead.
Yes, please. No, please.
No, it's crazy. Like, so much of us want to know how to think. What route should I take? What's my GPS? So many different things. I find myself knowing the answer to things at work, but asking somebody anyway, just to be safe and all that doubt. And like somebody who doesn't have all that doubt or whatever, you're stripping that, like you're really stripping them of the value of life by giving them an example so they can relate, or a historical fact so they can see the other side. You kind of like you invade their mind with your experiences and now limit their own experiences, is what I've kind of taken from what you're saying.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm taking it a little bit more in the sense of like deeply philosophically, but yes, I can see that as well. That you when you have an influence on somebody else's thinking, that's certainly the case. But here I'm also talking about an added layer of just this any at all.
Yeah, any level at all, and it can go all the way up to the examples that you're bringing. I'm saying it would even go down to the minute level of I'm standing inside with my friends. Oh, do I need a coat? I don't know. Let me check the weather. And I'm like, sir, I have a door, I have a window. Like you could stick your head out. Same idea. Small things as well. That's
absolutely. It certainly goes to every level. Every level of questioning and anxiety and dithering and wobbling. It all involves some kind of fundamental terror. But the beauty is that spiritual psychotherapy, I think, really begins when you're able to overcome that. When you're able to overcome that fundamental fear that it's possible for one to overcome the other. And when you realize you're the whole thing, you really are the positive and the negative. That doesn't mean that you're always going to be a great hero, that you won't jump when you hear it bang, that you won't worry occasionally, that you won't lose your temper. It means, though, that fundamentally, deep down within you, you will be able to be human, not a stone Buddha, right? So you're still going to be a human being at the end of the day. You're not going to just totally be stoic when anything happens. He says, in Zen, there's a difference made between a living Buddha and a stone Buddha. If you go out to a stone Buddha and you hit him hard on the head, nothing happens. You break your fist or something. You break your stick. But if you hit a living Buddha, he may say, ouch. That's the difference. A living Buddha is a real live human being who is present with whatever's going on and who naturally allows his emotions and his reactions to flow. Buddhas are human, he says. And again, we say Buddha as someone who has woken up. They are not gods. They are enlightened men and women. But the point is that they are not afraid to be human. They are not afraid to let themselves participate in the pains, difficulties, and struggles that naturally go with human existence. The only difference is, and it's almost an undetectable difference, it takes one to know one. So here's the beauty of it. A Zen poem says, when two Zen masters meet each other on the street, they need no introduction. When thieves meet, they recognize one another instantly. So a person who is the real cool Zen understander does not go around saying, oh, I understand Zen. I have Satori. I have this attainment I have this attainment. I have the other attainment. That's not what it's about. It's just something that, boom, you got it. So when one Zen master sees another Zen master, he looks at the other one with a kind of smirk on his face. And the other guy probably smirks back because they both see through the seriousness that everybody else is taking this game with. Everybody else playing this game is constantly concerned. How can we ever allow black to win over white, negative over positive, yin over yang? How could we ever allow this? Meanwhile, the Zen master, even though he might have fear, he sees through that game. And he knows that it's impossible for any real death to be final or any real negative to overcome. Chuang Tzu said, the perfect man employs his mind as a mirror. It grasps nothing, it refuses nothing, it receives but does not keep. Another poem says of wild geese flying over a lake, the wild geese do not intend to cast their reflection, and the water has no mind to retain their image. All right, so all of this is simply trying to allow you to understand what is it like to be in a state of mind where you allow things to wash over you without things getting stuck. And this is one of my favorite parts of the lecture. He says, all that sounds a little bit, you know what I mean? It sounds pious. And in Zen, things that sound pious are said to stink of Zen, right? If you tell somebody or something that they said, you say it stinks of Zen or you stink of Zen, it's like a way of saying what we said in the beginning, which is it's a pity to say so. Zen is not supposed to be something that sounds religious or sounds pious, right? The point of Zen is really just to have no hang up. That is to say, to be able to drift like a cloud and flow like water, seeing that all life is a magnificent illusion, a playing of energy. And there's absolutely nothing fundamentally to be afraid of. Fundamentally, you will be afraid on the surface. You will be afraid of putting your hand in the fire. You'll be afraid of getting sick, etc. But you will not be afraid of fear. I think that's so important because the things that really get us within this journey of ours, the psychological, spiritual journey that we're all on, it's no amount of sadness can really get to us. No amount of fear can really get to us. The problem really begins when we get into a loop, when we become depressed about feeling depressed or afraid of feeling afraid. That's real depression and that's real anxiety. But a healthier form of sadness and fear is just to feel the sadness and the fear when they come up, but not to continue to feed them with a looping of that same emotion. Don't fight the emotion. Just allow it to wash over you and make its way down the stream. You cannot attain it by not thinking, or you cannot attain it by thinking, and you cannot attain it by not thinking. You cannot grasp it by not thinking. All right. So what he's saying basically is, it's not about thinking about something or not thinking about something. It's not about grasping or not grasping. Or you could say, you cannot catch hold of the meaning of Zen by doing something about it. But equally, you cannot see into its meaning by doing nothing about it. Because both are in their different ways attempts to move from where you are now here to somewhere else. And the point is that we come to an understanding of this, what I call suchness, only through being completely here. Right? So I love this because it's a not doing that's not an intentional not doing. It's just simple not doing. It's true relaxation in the deepest sense of the term. But if your intention is to not do in order to become relaxed, you're already doing something. When the old master,
it's acceptance.
Exactly. Total acceptance.
Right, because you're not moving and you're not staying still. You're
Exactly.
just being.
Staying still is like, all right, now I have to set an intention to remain still. This is just naturally just being, exactly like you're saying. It's just, I think the beauty of this is It's not just one thing to put into words, but it's like a bunch of different things that we can, continue to have more and more of a flavor and more of a sense of this. Hey, Baruch haba. Yeah, Fadal, have a seat. So now we'll continue on with what he's saying. Yeah, please do. When the old master Hyakujo was asked, "What is Zen?" he said, "When hungry, eat; when tired, sleep." But then, what did all the disciples say? They said, "Well, isn't that what he does? Right? Doesn't everybody already, when hungry, eat; when tired, sleep?" He says, "No. Ordinary people don't do anything of the kind. When they are hungry, they don't just eat; they think of all sorts of things. When they are tired, they don't just sleep, but dream all sorts of dreams." So there's a simplicity in Zen, which is when you're doing something, just do that thing. If I'm drinking the water,
I'm mindfully drinking the water.
I just drink the water. Right? That's the way to cure yourself of neuroticism, to cure yourself of continuous need to constantly entertain yourself with thinking or cling to a certain past or assert a certain future. It's not about that with Zen. It's just about dancing with what you're currently doing. When Suzuki Daisetsu was asked, "What is it like to have Satori?" he said, "Well, it's like ordinary everyday experience, except about 2 inches off the ground." But there's another saying that student who has attained Satori goes to hell as straight as an arrow, right? Foreign around here, because anyone who has a spiritual experience, whether you get it through Zazen, meaning sitting Zen, or through an LSD experience or anything like that, that gives you that experience. If you hold on to it, though, say, "Now I've got it," it's gone out of the window. Because the minute you grab the living thing, it's like catching a handful of water. The harder you clutch, the faster it squirts through your fingers. So now, I love this quote from Suzuki Daisetsu. It's normal everyday experience is exactly like Satori, except Satori feels like you're hovering about 2 inches off the ground. Because you're flowing so easily with everything, and you don't feel this heaviness to you. You don't feel a gravity. It feels lighter. That's basically what he's saying. And what does this mean? That the famous saying, the student who has attained Satori goes straight to hell as straight as an arrow. Why is that? Well, that's because so often, if you think you've attained Satori, that is exactly the road to hell.
What's Satori?
Satori is enlightenment. God bless me. It's sudden enlightenment. So if you think you've attained that, then you think there's a you who can cling to that experience, and thereby you have totally misunderstood the point of Zen. Thank you so much, Sadiq.
Well, you can attain it, so that's the other issue.
Exactly. There's no you that can attain it.
Yeah. Well, also it's aspirational anyway.
Yes, because to attain implies that there was a hisaron, something lacking, and then the attainment of it, and that's why the Buddha famously says in the Prajna Paramita, which is the Diamond Sutra, he says, after the experience of having this unadulterated, total, immersive enlightenment, where you have now, not only have you been enlightened, you've enlightened every being in the whole planet. At the same exact moment, you realize not a single being has been enlightened, including you. And it's only if you could have those two things simultaneously in your mind. Number one, it's total unadulterated enlightenment, and on the other hand, absolutely nothing was attained. Unless you fully see both of those, you've totally misunderstood the point. But I hope you're starting to get a flavor of what this is all trying to say. And it's like he says here, it's like trying to clutch a handful of water. The other way of saying it is, it's like trying to capture the wind in a box. right? It doesn't make any sense, and it's totally futile.
I could ascribe some meaning to that. Capture the wind in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving structure to something. You're being intentional about something. Like you're
But the point is,
you're having a range of something.
it ceases to be wind when it goes in the box. That's the point, is that you're describing something that cannot be done. It's like trying to create a four-sided triangle. By definition, it cannot be done.
Oh,
That's the point. So he says, yeah, there's nothing to get hold of because you don't need to get hold of anything. You had it from the beginning. It was already there. Now, if you go off in that way, that is what would be called in Buddhism a private Buddha, right? What they call a pratyeka Buddha. He's one who goes off into the transcendental world and is never seen again, right? This person's never seen ever again. And he's made a mistake from the standpoint of Buddhism, because from the standpoint of Buddhism, there is no fundamental difference between the transcendental world and this everyday world. This is so fundamental and so important, and that's why I think it's important that we discuss it. So let's see what he's saying. The bodhisattva, you see, who doesn't go off into a nirvana and stay there forever and ever, but comes back and lives ordinary everyday life to help the other beings to see through it too. He doesn't come back because he feels he has some sort of solemn duty to help all mankind and all that kind of pious stuff, right? It's not about that. He comes back because he sees the two worlds as being fundamentally the same. He sees all other beings as Buddhas. He sees them, to use the phrase of G.K. Chesterton, but now a great thing in the street seems any human nod, where move in strange democracy the million masks of God. So the point here is this pratyeka Buddha fundamentally didn't get it. If he thinks that he needs to go be private off on a mountaintop, then he's making a distinction between the mountaintop and everyday life. But a bodhisattva, the reason that he's so easily able to come right back into normal waking everyday consciousness is not because, oh, I'm going to be such a tzaddik and I'm going to set this intention to fix the world. That's not the point of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva has a wisdom that has naturally occurred to him because he sees through it all. He sees absolutely no distinction between meditating off in the corner by himself and going to work in the sanitary department in New York. He sees absolutely no difference. And when he looks at people that are quote unquote unenlightened, all he sees are faces of the Buddha. All he sees are faces of enlightened people who just don't know it, but they're already enlightened.
that brings something to mind actually.
Mm-hmm.
Could I share?
Please, yeah.
It brings to mind the statement from a Gemara and Tani. What you said about the, I forget the exact names. I'm not so sure of the
Mhm.
context. So
Yeah.
forgive me.
No.
But you said that he sees no difference between meditating in the corner himself
Yes.
and working in the sanitation department.
Yeah.
Made me think of a line from the Gemara that says, it speaks about two rabbis, two Amoraim, I think, who were discussing if one should move to the place of the other, right? Because maybe there are better people there, it's a better environment for him. And then one of the Amoraim replied to the other, En hamakom mechabed et ha'adam, ela ha'adam mechabed et mekomo.
Aywa ya habibi.
It's not the place that honors the person, rather it's the person who honors his place.
Beautiful.
So the way I personally see that, right, in a figurative sense, is that a person creates his state of well-being depending on where he is. He doesn't use the environment. He doesn't let the mood or the external factors or external environment dictate how he should be feeling or or his sense of self. He allows his sense of self to exert himself on his environment. So that's what came to mind when you mentioned meditating in the corner. working in the sanitation.
I think that is a beautiful and perfect quote, because it's not about where you are. It's about the perspective that you bring to it. So that's why famously we have another Zen koan. They say, what is the fundamental principle of Buddhism? And the guy says, a dried dung scraper. And what's the meaning of that? Well, if some might say, oh, a Sefer Torah. That's the fundamental holiest object that we can think of. This is saying, don't make any distinction between quote unquote holy and quote unquote unholy. There is no difference. Any difference that you see is a total illusion. And a person who is of this mindset can be anywhere and look at anything without feeling that he is not looking at the face of God. He can look at anything and say, this is the face of God, right? But here's one of my favorite parts. And that's why when you get up against the great guru, the Zen master or whatever, he has a funny look in his eyes, right? So the famously, Alan Watts said that he had a picture of one of these famous gurus on his wall. And he said, anytime I would look at it, it's this little smirk that he has in his eye that every time I walk in the room, it catches me. Like, stop taking everything so seriously. So this the famous archetype of a Zen guru, he looks you in the eye, has this funny look in his eyes. And when you say, I have a problem, guru, I'm really mixed up and I don't understand, right? So you feel like you have these big problems that you need help with. He looks at you in this queer way. I do think, oh, dear me, right? So now the person who's being looked at says, oh, no, he's reading my most secret thoughts. He's seeing all the awful things that I'm made of, right? All my cowardice, all my shortcomings. He's not doing anything of the kind. He isn't even interested in such things. He's looking at, if I may use Hindu terminology, he's looking at Shiva in you. He's saying, my God, Shiva, won't you come off it? Right? The point being, when he looks into your eyes, he's not seeing a pathetic human being. He's not seeing through all your secrets and all your darkest things that you've ever done or thought. This Zen guru, even though you might feel self-conscious and feel that way. Instead, he's looking at you as the face of God and saying, God, won't you just come off it already? Stop playing this game as though you're little old Dr. Nasser. I know exactly who you really are. I know that you're just God in drag. I know that you're just God with a mask. And that's the point. The point is, you can be able to look at anything and say, wow, this is the face of the divine. So Alan Watts gives the example in the lecture. He says, somebody that was on an LSD trip and they looked at an ashtray and they saw the beatific vision in this ashtray. They had a total mystical experience. And then after the experience, he looks at the ashtray. It's just an ashtray. But still, that's the point, is that when your eyes are really open, they're open to seeing God everywhere.
Sounds a lot like the concept of Tselem Elohim. I mean, every time I hear that, I'm thinking, that God created man with his breath.
Mm-hmm. Exactly it.
With his breath.
Yeah, that Hashem created, with his own breath created Adam, but also B'Tselmo, B'Tselem. So Hashem created us in His image. What does that mean? Well, every single person really is a spark of the divine. Really is the divine, but in hiding. We know Od Kasalma, Hashem is stretching out the light like it's right. He's stretching out these things like a shirt, like a cloth, like a curtain, hiding his face from us. But when we see through the veil, we're able to see what really is. All right. So finally, before we go to the Zohar, lightning flashes, sparks shower, in one blink of your eyes you've missed seeing. This is how we began it. And we'll say like this, which is, it's not something you could hold on to. It's something that happens faster than you can blink your eye, faster than the flash of lightning. But if it takes noticing the silence between the words. It takes noticing, let's say you have a wave of light or sound. The wave has the crests, which are moving so quickly, you might not notice the troughs in between. But once you start to notice that, there is God. So you ever sitting in a room and the fluorescent light is so bright, and it's like you don't even, and then you shut the lights, and then you see in your mind's eye, you see the light flashing. Even though when the light was on, you didn't see it flashing, you just saw a light. But when the light's off, you see the flashing, because you didn't even notice that it was something that was flashing. All of reality is that same way. It's flashing into and out of existence at all times.
You know what? Can I ask you about a physical
Yeah.
experience? You ever have this experience where you close your eyes, maybe even sleeping, you're falling asleep,
Mhm.
you kind of see these like circles start forming, like these.
Yes.
Like they just start forming. It's nothing.
Very
you see
normal.
because
Very,
your eyes
very
are
normal.
closed.
Baruch haba, good.
And they
Yeah.
look like kind of mixed colors. They look like very neon-y.
Yes, those are very normal experiences, because it's in your mind's eye, you're able to visualize, and it's not even your mind's eye. It's like just the physical, something about the way that the eye works. I'm not exactly sure. Probably something to do with the rods and the cones. I should have paid more attention in ophthalmology class. But when you close your eyes, sometimes if you press down in your eyelids, you can see, different patterns and different. My mom used to call it wallpaper.
Yes.
It's the same.
I feel like I don't know
Yeah.
if you can hear me. I feel like it's a basically you're just causing aberrant sensory information to be generated by your receptors. That's what I think is going on.
Most likely, yeah. Most likely that's what's going on. Great. Okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know about the rods and cones.
Yeah, yeah,
night
yeah.
Vision and color vision.
Yeah, man. All right. So without further ado, let's do some Zohar. So you guys can all follow along here. We left off last time talking about Shabbat. Yeah, same thing.
Can I follow along here?
Yeah, you can, but it's also here. Fadal. Let me see if I can open it up for you. Let's see. 16. Right. Should be right here. Okay. So we left off last time talking about Shabbat, and we were saying that there's Friday night is the Shekhinah, Saturday day is represented by I believe it was Yesod, right? So the feminine and the male elements of Shabbat, and that they're interchangeable. Right? Normally you would expect male before female. This is female before male. Shabbat is almost like transcending time and space. And that, why are there two? Well, it says in the pasuk, Et Shabbatotai Tishmoru, keep my Shabbats, plural.
And Shabbat Malkah, right?
Shabbat
So that's the
Malkah.
female.
So we think of it as in the feminine, but it also has this masculine element to it. So we'll see a lot more about that now.
Well, at night, right? At night it's Malkah. You're welcoming in the Shabbat. Usually say, like you said.
Yes, but we all
The Shekhinah.
Milaveh Malkah. We say Milaveh Malkah on Saturday night.
I mean Friday night, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Milaveh Malkah happens on Saturday night when you're seeing Shabbat off into the week. So Shabbat in regular terms is a feminine word, so it's always related to in the feminine, but Kabbalistically, because of this pasuk, it has a male and female element to it. This is because of the pasuk Et Shabbatotai Tishmoru. Right, so now you might ask, if so, why my Sabbaths you are to observe too? The answer is the Shabbat of Shabbat Eve and the Shabbat of the day itself, which are indivisible. And we said there are two aspects of Shabbat: the feminine Shabbat Friday night, which is Shekhinah, and the masculine Shabbat day, symbolized by Tiferet or Yesod, right, which are the male elements. Now I love this. The rambling donkey driver, goading behind them, said, and what is Umikdashi Tida'u, right? The continuation of the pasuk is and my sanctuary you are to hold in awe. Right. So first of all, who is this rambling donkey driver, and why is he contributing to this Torah conversation between Rabbi Elazar and some of the other students? Well, it's known as a tayyah. It was an Arabian caravaner. All right, so similar to some of the Uber drivers that we have today. I just thought that was funny. Derived from the name of the Arabian tribe Tayyi'i. The prophet Eliyahu returns to earth to appear as a tayyah in Masechet Berachot. and as an Arabi, as an Arab in Rut Zuta. So this is really interesting because the Tayya'a is not just some random Arab taxi driver. He is actually a person of real important insights. And the Zohar,
the merchant or no?
No, I don't think so. And the Zohar Tayya'a indicates one of several wandering donkey drivers who annoy, perplex, and enlighten the companions on the road. Right. So the job almost of this person is to be a sounding board and to be almost like a havruta for these rabbis on their way.
Right, but it's comedic, right?
It's
I mean,
comedic.
it's you know,
Exactly.
it's funny.
It's
like
very funny.
knowledge is coming from a place that you don't expect it. So
Do
it's
not
fun.
expect it. You do not expect him to be piping in with the Tayya'a. You don't expect the Arab driver to be piping up with Hidushim. So he replies, right? So first of all, this guy is saying, what about the second half of the pasuk? What do you do with that here? And now Rabbi Azar answers, who Rabbi Azar being the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, this is the holiness of the Shabbat, right? So now this is beautiful because he's interpreting the rest of the pasuk, Umikdashi tirau, that you should hold my sanctuary in awe. Normally we think of Mikdash as a place. He's saying, no, even the word Mikdash is actually talking about the holiness of Shabbat, which is interesting, by the way, because Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel has a book called The Sabbath, and he talks about the Sabbath as being a palace in time. And I believe this is where he got it from. So this Arab driver is saying, in response, what is the holiness of the Sabbath? Right? So then Rabbi Azar replies, this is the holiness drawn down from above. Right, so they're trying to interpret the second half of the pasuk as this Mikdash really means Shabbat, which is the holiness drawn down from Shamayim. So now the driver is saying, if so, you have returned the Shabbat into something not holy, except for the holiness that rests upon it from above. So he's saying, how could you say that? How could you say that this is holiness only drawn down from above, if Shabbat we think of as inherently holy? Rabbi Abbas said, so it is. Call the Shabbat a delight, the holy of Yod Kevavke honored from Yeshayahu. We read this in Kiddush on Saturday day, right? V'karata la Shabbat oneg, likdosh Adonai mechubad. All right, so he's saying actually Shabbat and holy of Yod Kevavke are each mentioned separately. So therefore, if you're mentioning Shabbat as one thing and holy of God as another thing, it must be that Shabbat is in itself holy, right? That's why they're able to be separated. He said, if so, who is holy of Yod Kevavke? Then who is Likdosh Adonai? He replied, holiness that descends from above, resting upon it. Right? So Shabbat is on the one hand holy in and of itself, but at the same time, it's Likdosh Adonai, which means the holiness of God also rests upon it. He said, if holiness drawn down from above is called honored, then it appears that the Sabbath is not honored. Well, that's because he's saying, if you look at the pasuk, Likdosh Adonai mechubad, what is this word mechubad? If it's called honored, then you're saying, oh, then are you implying that God has to honor it because it's not inherently honored? Yet it is written, v'chibato. The next word in the pasuk is Likdosh Adonai mechubad v'chibato me'asot derachecha, and honor it. So you're saying if it says in the pasuk to honor Shabbat, that must mean that it's honorable in and of itself. So he's really giving them a hard time, as you can tell, this Arab driver. Rabbi Azar said to Rabbi Abba, let this man be. Oh, so it must be Rabbi Abba was having this exchange with him. Now Rabbi Azar says, leave him be. Within him lies a new word we do not know. Meaning he has wisdom that we need to understand. So now they're finally going to allow this Arab driver to really say his shita, his perspective.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Is this a Braita or Midrash?
This
or
is all
this
Midrashim
actually-
from the Zohar.
It's from Midrash Shabbat, or this is actually the Zohar?
This is actual Zohar.
All
So
right.
we could talk a little bit more about that, but I'll tell you afterwards. Good question, though. So now they tell him, speak. Okay, Daber, tell us what you think. He opens saying, Et Shabbatotai, my Sabbaths. Et amplifies the meaning of this pasuk to include the range of Shabbat, right? So et is this extra word, lerabot, to include. All right, so let's see. No ascertainable independent sense. But Nahum of Gimzo and his disciple Rabbi Akiva taught that when et appears in a biblical verse, it amplifies the original meaning. All right, so this is a very famous thing that you could be doresh every et to see the extra meaning that it has. Le'asga'a, which means to increase, or lerabot. Right, so what is the word et shabbatotai coming to include? 2,000 cubits, the traditional limitation, right? The Tehom Shabbat, you could only walk 2,000 cubits, 2,000 amot within the city limits. But here, actually, it refers to the range of holiness beyond the realm of the Sefirot, according to certain interpretations, the feet of the divine chariot, right? So actually, it's talking about the feet of Hashem's Merkabah. So some very interesting interpretation that they're trying to give to it. But bottom line, Et Shabbatotai means Shabbat's holiness extends in all four directions, even including the different limbs of God's chariot. So the meaning is expanded. Et Shabbatotai, my Sabbaths, one is the higher Shabbat, the other, the lower Shabbat, both included as one, concealed as one. All right, so what's going on here? What is this business about an upper and a lower Shabbat? So the higher Shabbat is Binah, the seventh Sefirah counting up from Yesod. So obviously Shabbat is the seventh day. So if you count up from Yesod, 7, you get to Binah. And that would be the upper Shabbat. What about the lower Shabbat? That's Yesod, because it's the 7th counting down from Binah. Interesting. Okay, so now we're bringing it to Sefirot terms, and we'll see soon what this means. So both included as one, concealed as one. So first we said that earlier we said there's a male and female element to it. And now this Arab driver is agreeing with that. And he's saying, yes, they actually correspond. And I'll prove it to you to Binah and Yesod, because they're 7 away from each other. Another Shabbat was left unmentioned and felt ashamed. Which Shabbat was this? This was Shabbat Eve, Friday night, symbolizing the Shekhinah. So Shekhinah felt embarrassed. She said before Hashem, she said, Master of the universe, Ribbono Shel Olam, since the day you created me, I have been called Shabbat. And there can be no day without night. Right? So the Sephirotic day of Yesod needs the night of Shekhinah. Right? So Shekhinah is saying, if I'm Friday night and Yesod is Saturday day, he needs me. There would be no Saturday day without a Friday night, right? According to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Bereshit Rabbah in the Midrash, Shabbat complains to God that she has no partner among the days of the week, right? Because the first 6 days each have a partner, being even numbers, but the 7th day is the odd man out. So what did Hashem tell Shabbat to console her, according to Bereshit Rabbah?
I didn't get that.
So.
Sorry.
Day 1 and day 2 are partners. Day 3 and day 4 are partners.
Day
Day 5 and day 6 are partners. Day 7 is standing alone.
All
Good.
right, I got it.
So now, what is Hashem telling Shabbat in order to console her? He's saying, Knesset Israel is your partner. How beautiful is that?
Mm-hmm.
The assembly of Israel is your partner. And that's a way of saying, Shabbat, you thought you were alone, but really, Bnei Israel are your partners. He replied, my daughter, so now we're going back to the Zohar, my daughter, you are Shabbat, right? Shekhinah, he's saying, you are Shabbat. I call you Shabbat, but I am about to crown you with a higher crown. He issued a proclamation, my sanctuary you are to hold in awe, Umikdashi tira'u. This is the Shabbat of Shabbat Eve. So we said, Et Shabbatotai is talking about Binah and Yesod. So Shekhinah felt left out. Hashem said, you know what? Umikdashi tira'u. He continued the pasuk, and Mikdashi tira'u was actually talking about Shekhinah. So Shabbatotai was Binah and Yesod. Mikdashi tira'u includes Shekhinah. Why is Mikdashi tira'u, awe of my sanctuary, talking about Shekhinah? Because Shabbat Eve is awe, and in whom awe dwells. Who is that? The one included by the Holy One when he said, I am Yod Kevavke Ani Adonai. So let's see, Shabbat of Shabbat Eve, Friday night, is Shekhinah, who conveys the attribute of judgment, of Din, inspiring awe and fear. the Sefirah of Chokhmah, the father of Shekhinah, is also called Awe and is reflected in his daughter, who is lower Chokhmah. So somehow, Shekhinah is a manifestation of Chokhmah, being the lowest of all the Sefirot, with Chokhmah being at its head, because Keter is kind of floating all the way above. Chokhmah manifests itself as Shekhinah. And because Chokhmah is Din and is Yir'ah, therefore Shekhinah also is Yir'ah. So that therefore, Umikdashit I was talking about Shekhinah. The end of the pasuk says, Ani Adonai, I am Kevavke. The full verse reads, Et Shabbat Tishmor Umikdashit Tirau Ani Adonai. Through Shekhinah, God reveals the full spectrum of divine personality and is thus called I. Right? Even though Shekhinah is the lowest level, it manifests all the higher levels in itself, and therefore Shekhinah is called I. In this phrase, I is joined with Yod Kevavke, and Yod Kevavke represents Tiferet, which is one of the male elements that joins with Shekhinah. Shekhinah manifests in both sacred time, Shabbat, and sacred space and sanctuary. All right, so Tiferet joining with Shekhinah is basically what's happening at the end of this pasuk. But the point is, Shekhinah can manifest in sacred time as Shabbat and in sacred space as a sanctuary. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's continue. I heard my father say so precisely. It includes, right? So this is Rabbi Al-Azhar saying about his father, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It includes the range of Shabbat. Et Shabbatotai, right? My Sabbaths are a circle with a square inscribed within. What does that mean? So Shabbatot are like a circle with a square inscribed within. Let's see the footnote. The phrase derives from Masechet Eruvin. Here the reference is to the higher Sefirot, beginning with Binah and culminating in Yesod and Shekhinah. Right, so it's the higher Sefirot that are culminating in Shekhinah and Yesod. And see also where the letter of the circle of the letter Samech symbolizes Binah, while the square of the letter Mem, Sofit, symbolizes Shekhinah. So similar idea. Let's see what the derasha is. They are two, corresponding to which are two hallowings we should recite. One is Vaychulu, and they, heaven and earth, were completed. Right, Vaychulu Shamayim Va'aretz, heaven and earth were completed. The other Kiddush, hallowing, Vaychulu, contains 35 words, and in the Kiddush that we recite, there are 35 words, altogether amounting to 70 names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with which Knesset Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, is adorned. All right, so let's see what all these ideas are saying. Vaychulu, right, which is the opening lines of Kiddush. So now when you say Kiddush, you can have a Kabbalistic understanding of what it's saying, really beautiful. The opening lines of Kiddush are saying, Vaychulu Shamai Va'aretz, the heaven and earth are being finished. The prayer is recited over wine. And then Kiddush, the rest of the prayer, which includes the blessings over wine and the blessing of hallowing the Shabbat. So we have Borei Pri HaGefen and we have Mekadesh HaShabbat. In the Kiddush that we recite, there are 35 words. Right? So this total requires the omission of the following 10 words. So you can't, the Ashkenazim say, Ki Yom, and also Kibanu Maharta Ve'otanu Kidasha Mikol Amim. So if you leave those 10 words out, you end up with 35. We know that the Vaychulu Shamayim Va'aretz, the Pesukim themselves have 35 words. The Kiddush that we add has 35 words. In total, you have 70 words, which of course corresponds to the 7 days of creation. And also, here we're going to see the 70 names that Hashem adorned Shekhinah with. All right, so for various lists of these names, you can look in different places. So let's see what this is trying to say. Since this, so now we're saying that the Knesset Yisrael is being adorned with these 70 different names. Knesset Yisrael in Rabbinic Hebrew, this phrase denotes the people of Israel. The Midrash on the Song of Songs of Shira Shirim describes the love affair between the maiden, the earthly community of Israel, and her lover. Right? So in the Zohar, Knesset Yisrael can refer to the earthly community, but also often primarily to Shekhinah. the divine feminine counterpart of the people, the aspect of God most intimately connected with them. The lovers in the Song of Songs are pictured as the divine couple, Tiferet and Shekhinah. So beautifully, Shir HaShirim can either be talking about Bnei Israel and God. It could also be talking about two Sefirot, Tiferet and Shekhinah, the male and the female element. And it could also be talking about Shekhinah with Knesset Israel. Sorry, Shekhinah, which is Knesset Israel, alongside the people. Right? So the divine feminine corresponding to Bnei Israel. Since this circle and square are my Sabbaths, they are both included in Shamor, observe, right? As is written, Tishmoru, you are to observe. Right, so now it gets a little bit detailed,
Geometrical.
a little bit geometrical, right? So
I'm loving the math over
it's
here.
very cool stuff. So both aspects of the Shabbat, the masculine Yesod and the feminine Shekhinah, are included in the feminine. Right? How is that? Which is signified by the opening word of the fourth of the Ten Commandments, Shamor. Right? So Shamor somehow signifies both the masculine and the feminine. Why? Well, it symbolizes the feminine because the other version of the Ten Commandments reads Zachor. Remember, and we say Zachor is Zachar. So if Zachor is Zachar, then Shamor must be Nekeva. In the verse in Leviticus 19, the plural verb Tishmoru, you are to observe, indicates the union of male and female. So Shamor must include both male and female because it corresponds to Tishmoru, which is plural. Bottom line, Shamor is both male and female. Zachor is just the male. Let's see what they make out of this.
Shamor is both male and female. Zachor is just masculine.
Exactly, because like Zachar,
yeah,
which means male. Whereas the higher Sabbath is not included here in Shamor, observe, but rather in Zachor. Remember, for the right, so Zachor means remember. For the supreme king is completed by Zachor. So the higher Shabbat, let's see what that means. Binah is represented by Zachor. The supreme king in higher Sabbath finds its completion in the masculine Sefirah of Yesod, signified by Zachor, which implies Zachar, male. So Binah, even though that's a female element, it has this component of Zachor to it. Although often depicted as the Divine Mother, Binah is also described as world of the male, encompassing the entire configuration of Sefirot from Chesed through Yesod. All right, so I love this because we're constantly doing this. We said about Shekhinah, even though it's feminine, it symbolizes also Chokhmah. It's the culmination of everything leading up from the male to the female. So that the same thing is going on here with Binah. Binah is also a manifestation of Zachor, of Zachar, of Yesod, of the masculine, because it's the culmination of everything leading into its creation. Together they constitute a masculine entity ready to join the Shekhinah. I know it gets a little bit too detailed here. So he is called the king who possesses peace, and his peace is Zachor, right? Why is Hashem called the king who possesses peace? In Midrashic literature, this phrase is applied to God. Here it designates Binah, who contains Yesod, who is called peace, either because he mediates between the right and left poles of the Sefirot, or because he unites Tiferet with Shekhinah. And you can look in Masechet Shabbat, Rabbi Shimon ben Halafta refers to the phallus as the peacemaker of the home. So we see very often that the Sefirot that are in the very center of the chart of Sefirot are known as peacemakers because they're balancing the masculine and the feminine. That is why there is no strife above, because of the two pieces below. One Yaakov, the other Yosef. All right, so what is this saying? Well, Yaakov symbolizes Tiferet, the masculine Sefirah of Tiferet. Yosef symbolizes Yesod, the divine phallus. So both of them are being symbolized here. And we'll say quickly, we have the pasuk. So it is written twice: peace, peace, shalom, shalom, la rachok v'la karov, to the far and to the near. Right? Exactly. Exactly. To the far refers to Yaakov, and the near refers to Yosef. To the far, as is said, from afar, Yod Kevavke appeared to me. That's talking about Tiferet, which is Yaakov. His sister stood far off. That's talking about Miriam, of course, but it also symbolizes Shekhinah, who's facing Tiferet. And the near, as it said, new gods who came from nearby, right? Which is pretty jarring because it's a pasuk about Avodah Zarah, but it's talking about Yosef, which is Yesod. Nearby represents a more recent emanation of Yaakov because he's closer to us. From afar, and just genealogically, from afar is the highest point, standing in its palace, right? So, Chokhmah, the primordial point of emanation, is situated in the palace of Binah. Tiferet issues from them from afar. So again, it's trying to point out everything you see here as the end of the process really began in the beginning of a very long process. So even though these Sefirot at the very bottom are manifesting as either Shekhinah or as Tiferet or as Yesod, really they are the culmination of all the upper Sefirot. So it is written, Tishmoru, you are to observe, included in Shamor, observe my sanctuary, you are to hold in awe, is the point standing in the center, right? So now it's trying to explain how does this relate to Shabbat. So it is written, Shamor, observe, referring back to the two Shabbatot, Yesod and Shekhinah, who are indicated together by the plural verb Tishmoru, you are to observe. So the point standing in the center, the central point of Shekhinah inside the square inscribed within the circle. So Shekhinah could be thought of as the very, very epicenter of everything that's going on, the center point inside the square which is within the circle. So it's the focal point, which one should fear more than anything. For it's right. So you should have this level of yirah. Why? Because for its punishment is death, as is written, Mehaleleha mot yumat. Anyone who breaks this shall surely be killed. Anyone who profanes it, whoever enters the halal, the hollow of the circle and the square, the site where the point rests and damages it, shall surely be put to death. So it is written, you are to hold in awe that point is called I, and on it rests that high concealed one, unrevealed. That is Yod Kevavke, and all is one. So we'll briefly end here. Whoever enters damages it. Profaning the Shabbat damages the core of Shekhinah. So it's saying because Shabbat is a sanctuary in time, because Shabbat is such an important thing for all of Bnei Israel, for everything that we're mentioning here, and also it represents the core of Shekhinah, represents that element of God which is most intimately dwelling amongst us. When you break Shabbat, you're emptying out the center of the circle and the square. You're destroying that dot in the center, which is Shekhinah. And it's called I. So here, 1 second, let's see. Who fully expresses the personality of God, called I. Tiferet, more concealed than Shekhinah. All is one. The conclusion of the verse, Ani Yod Kevavke, indicates that Tiferet and Shekhinah are united. So the point being, at the end of the day, Shekhinah is the very center of it, and that is what's called I. That's how Hashem is manifesting. And on it rests that high concealed one, the unrevealed. Right? And the point being, Tiferet and Shekhinah and everything that came before them are all manifesting in the Shekhinah. And that's Yod Kevavke, that's the oneness of everything. The conclusion of all of it is Ani Adonai, which indicates Tiferet and Shekhinah are now united. I know this was a lot of nitty-gritty, but I think the beauty of it is the deeper spiritual message with it, which is whatever you see as the tip of the iceberg really is really concealing so much. So the Shekhinah at this very tip, in the center of the square, in the center of the circle, thank you for drawing it, is a manifestation of every divine energy that you could ever conceive of. So when we keep Shabbat, when we are in the sanctuary within time, we can think about every single thing that happened within creation, whether it be in the spiritual realms or the physical realms, everything that's manifesting itself as this Shekhinah on Friday night when we're reading Kiddush, and it's 70 words representing the 7 days of creation, and the way that Hashem is adorning that Shekhinah. Hashem is giving Shekhinah so much beauty and so much grandeur. It's that one little point, but really represents everything around it, right? Everything around it being the square and the circle and everything manifesting outwards. A lot of people that have mystical visions, especially on LSD and whatnot, will imagine this type of vision of a circle and a square continuing, and then outside the square, the circle will be another square. Outside that square will be another circle, and on and on and on. So Shekhinah is the tip of the iceberg, the central focal point out of which everything can be seen to manifest.
Yes.
Baruch Adonai Olam, amen ve'amen. So then you could draw here another thing out there, right?
Yeah.
And then you could draw, it keeps going and keeps going. So
What-
there's infinity,
Which
I think, is contained within this fractal of Shabbat. I know I'm really reading into it a lot, but I really think this is what it's saying. Shekhinah is at the very epicenter. And then you have fractals, outwards,
Which
outwards,
one
outwards,
so what's halal?
constantly
What's
manifesting.
Shekhinah? What's halal?
Halal,
Is
halal means if you empty out the Shekhinah, if you halal means to
to desecrate.
profane, to desecrate, but also it means to make it empty. And if you
Yeah.
take away the Shekhinah, you're emptying out the center of this, and then you don't get all these beautiful fractals. If you break Shabbat, you don't get that central focal point out of which you can view all the beautiful manifestations and 70 adornments of Shabbat.
What about
I hope that makes sense.
does this point have
No,
mean something?
I don't think so.
No, it's
just
this
that
point.
center point,
I
exactly.
understood the hold on.
So in the meantime,
Those are-
Good
those
and
items
Good
are
and Dr.
halal.
Nasser, give me 1 second. Good and Dr. Nasser, you have any questions? Because otherwise I'll stop the recording for now.
Circle on the square.
No, I'm good.
Good.
I've read through this before, so it's nice to hear it and think about it again.
Amazing. You like my
It's yeah, it's Ani Hashem. At the end, he's saying basically all of this is just a representation of the singularity, of Hashem, and which is you could think of as the combination of all the Sefirot. Obviously, the combination of the Shekhinah with the Yesod. It's all kind of, that I think that's the concept, which is basically what a lot of what you were saying. It's all a representative of everything. I like the concept of a sanctuary in time.
Mhm.
The words are beautiful. It makes you appreciate the Kiddush and Shabbat by extension.
Absolutely. And the focal point for me is literally the focal point of this. And thank you, Victor, for drawing it. You have that center point in the very
Right.
center of this, and you see the fractals that are emerging from it. That's the way it's trying to describe Shekhinah as the manifestation of the center point, and everything that we were mentioning, the distant corner and the thing from way beyond. Oh, you could even within Shekhinah, you could see everything that conspired to create it. Right? You could see the Chokhmah, you could see literally God's wisdom, but the Shekhinah that is manifesting all this is certainly there.
Do you know about Zamir Bishbahin?
No.
It's a section of Zohar that's customary to say on Friday night.
Really?
It's from the Zohar, I believe. Yeah, if you know anything about it,
Okay, let's
please
talk
let
about
me
it
know.
next week for sure.
I remember
You have to update us next week. All right, guys, I
Thank
gotta go.
you very much.
Uh,
Thank you very much,
Have a
guys.
good night. Thank
Have a
you.
great night. Thank you for joining.
have a good night.
All right,
My
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.